You are not here by accident. I want you to hear that clearly. You did not click this by mistake. You did not randomly arrive at this exact moment in your life and find these words waiting for you. Something in you called this forth. Something in you was searching, even if you never spoke it out loud. And I am speaking to you directly now, because you are ready to hear what most people are not ready to accept. Your life is not happening to you. It is happening from you. I want you to sit with that. Everything you have experienced, every frustration, every success, every delay, every door that closed and every door that opened, all of it has emerged from the state of consciousness you occupy. You may resist this at first. You may feel the impulse to blame circumstances, other people, the economy, your past, your childhood, but I am telling you, gently and firmly, that you are not a victim of an outer world. You are the operant power. The world is responding to you. You have been living like the eagle who forgot it could fly. You learned to lower your head. You learned to peck at the ground. You learned to accept a smaller identity because it was comfortable, because it was familiar, because everyone around you agreed that this was reality. But you have always felt something restless inside you. You have felt that quiet tension, that subtle dissatisfaction that whispers there must be more. That whisper is not madness. That whisper is memory. You are remembering who you are, and who you are is not the name you were given, not the job title you carry, not the story of your failures, not the wounds you repeat in your mind. You are consciousness itself, assuming a role, and the role you assume determines the life you live. If you assume you are limited, life will prove it. If you assume you are unworthy, life will echo that belief. If you assume you are powerful, chosen, capable, life has no choice but to rearrange itself around that assumption. You do not attract what you want. You express what you are. So I ask you now, who have you been being? Not what do you want. Who have you been being? Because that is the only thing that matters. The world is not a random stage filled with independent actors attacking or blessing you. It is a mirror. It is an say. When you shout silently within yourself, I am not enough, the world answers not enough. When you live in the quiet conviction that you are overlooked, the world obliges. And when you dare to assume I am chosen, I am worthy, I am favored, the entire structure of your experience begins to shift. This is not fantasy. This is law. And you have been using this law unconsciously your entire life. The question is not whether it works. The question is whether you will now use it deliberately. You have been holding on to old identities like the elephant tied to a small stake, convinced you cannot move because once upon a time you tried and failed. But you are no longer that child. You are no longer that past version. You are stronger now, more aware now. The rope is no longer strong, only the belief is. And beliefs are simply thoughts you have repeated until they felt like facts. I am asking you to dare to question the so-called facts of your life. Who told you that you are bad with money? Who told you that relationships never work for you? Who told you that success is for others? Those are assumptions you accepted. And because you accepted them, you lived them. But you can accept something new. Right now, you can decide that the old story is finished. You can assume a new identity. And when you do, you will feel it first. It will not immediately appear in your outer world. There is always a delay between the inner shift and the outer reflection. That delay is where most people quit. They change their thought for a day, then look at the world and say nothing happened. And in that moment they return to the old assumption. Do not make that mistake. When you assume a new state, you must persist in it, even if the evidence contradicts you. Especially if the evidence contradicts you, because the evidence you see is only the echo of who you were, not who you are becoming. You must live as though the new identity is already true, not with forced positivity, not with empty words, but with quiet conviction. If you assume you are abundant, you think from abundance. If you assume you are loved, you think from love. If you assume you are powerful, you think from power, and the world must follow. It has no choice. You are not waiting for life to change so you can feel different. You feel different so life can change. That is the reversal you must understand. And I am telling you this because you are ready to stop living as a reaction and start living as a creator. You are not here to survive a random universe. You are here to awaken within it. And the moment you accept that you are the source, not the effect, everything begins to reorganize around you. There is a collective hypnosis moving through this world, and I need you to understand that you were born into it. No one announced it to you. No one explained it. Yet from the moment you opened your eyes, you were taught what is possible, what is realistic, what is too much, what is dangerous, what is foolish. You were not taught who you are. You were taught who you should be, and slowly, gently, almost invisibly, you began to shrink to fit the expectations around you. I want you to picture an eagle's egg falling into a chicken coop. It hatches among chickens. It grows among chickens. It watches them scratch the dirt and flap their wings a few inches off the ground. No one tells the eagle it is different. No one tells it that it belongs to the sky. So it imitates what it sees. It lowers its head. It pecks at the ground. It measures itself by how well it behaves like the others. And if one day it feels a strange pull when it looks at the horizon, it ignores it, because no one else reacts that way. I am telling you that you have been that eagle. You were not born doubting yourself. You learned to doubt. You were not born afraid of being seen. You learned to be cautious. You were not born believing that success is rare, or that love is fragile, or that abundance is limited. You absorbed those assumptions from a hypnotized world, and because everyone around you agreed on those limitations, you mistook consensus for truth. This is how collective hypnosis works. It does not force you. It suggests, it repeats, it normalizes smallness until smallness feels safe. You were praised for being realistic, for not dreaming too big, for not being too loud, for not asking for too much. And little by little, you adjusted your self-image. You clipped your own wings to avoid standing out. But inside you there has always been tension. That tension is not anxiety. It is misalignment. It is the quiet knowing that the role you are playing is smaller than the being you are. When the eagle looks up and sees another eagle soaring high above, something awakens. It feels both fear and recognition. Fear because flying is unknown. Recognition because flying feels like home. When you see someone living boldly, loving fully, creating freely, something stirs inside you. That stirring is not jealousy, it is memory. You remember that you are not meant to crawl, and yet the hypnotic voice of the world says, be careful. Stay grounded. Do not be unrealistic. Do not embarrass yourself. That voice sounds practical. It sounds protective, but it is the voice of limitation. I am not asking you to rebel against society. I am asking you to awaken within it, because the cage was never locked. The eagle was never physically restrained. It was mentally conditioned, and mental conditioning is powerful only when it goes unquestioned. I want you to question everything you believe about yourself. Who decided you are average? Who decided that your dreams are unlikely? Who decided that you must struggle for decades before tasting freedom? These are inherited assumptions. They are not eternal truths. The world operates on shared beliefs, and shared beliefs create shared realities. If everyone believes money is scarce, they compete, and fear and hoard, and scarcity appears real. If everyone believes love is hard to maintain, they expect disappointment, and disappointment becomes common. But remember this: shared belief does not equal ultimate reality. It equals collective imagination solidified, and you have been participating in that imagination unconsciously. You have accepted the limits of the coop because everyone else agreed that this is as high as one can go. Yet you feel the sky calling you. The sky represents possibility without ceiling. The sky represents identity without apology. And you do not need permission to rise. The moment the eagle realizes it is not a chicken, everything changes. It may still stand in the same dirt for a while. It may still hear the same clucking. But inwardly, something shifts. It no longer identifies with the ground. That shift in identification is the true awakening. You do not need to escape your current circumstances immediately. You need to withdraw your belief from the idea that those circumstances define you. When you stop identifying as small, smallness loses its grip. When you stop calling yourself unlucky, life stops proving it. This is not about arrogance. It is about accuracy. You are not meant to measure yourself by the limitations of a hypnotized crowd. Most people never question the coop. They are born in it. They live in it. They defend it. If you suggest there is more, they will laugh or warn you, not because they hate you, but because your potential threatens their comfort. When the eagle spreads its wings for the first time, the chickens may panic. They may say you will fall. You will hurt yourself. Stay where it is safe, but safety and destiny are rarely the same place. I am speaking to you because you feel that pull. You would not be listening otherwise. Something in you refuses to settle completely. That refusal is sacred. Do not silence it. Do not medicate it with distractions. Do not drown it in routine. The world will try to convince you that awakening is impractical, but the most impractical thing you can do is live your entire life as something you are not. You have been hypnotized into thinking you must earn your right to rise, but your right to rise is inherent. It is not granted by approval. It is discovered through awareness. The first flight does not require perfect confidence. It requires willingness to test your wings. And once you leave the ground, even briefly, you will never again believe you were born to scratch the dirt. You may return to the coop for a time, but you will not belong to it, because once you see the sky as yours, you cannot unknow it. And I am telling you now, you were not created to live and die within borrowed limitations. You were created to remember that you are greater than the story you were handed. The hypnosis ends the moment you decide to see through it, and that decision belongs to you. Now I want you to understand something that may unsettle you at first. Your identity is not fixed. It is not carved in stone. It is not a life sentence handed to you at birth. Your identity is a choice. It is an assumption repeated so often that it feels like truth. And because it feels like truth, you defend it, even when it limits you, even when it hurts you. You say this is just who I am. You say I have always been this way. But I am telling you gently and firmly that who you have been is not who you must remain. Think of a chick inside an egg. The shell feels like the entire world. It feels protective. It feels familiar. But there comes a moment when the very shell that once protected becomes a prison. If the chick refuses to break it, it will never live. I want you to see that your current identity may have once protected you. Maybe being quiet kept you safe. Maybe being agreeable kept you loved. Maybe playing small kept you from criticism. But what once protected you can now suffocate you. And the discomfort you feel is not a sign that you are broken. It is a sign that you are ready to hatch. The shell is cracking. When I say identity is a choice, I do not mean you can pretend to be anything with empty affirmations. I mean that the self you experience is the result of the state of consciousness you occupy. You wake up each day as someone. That someone has expectations. That someone anticipates certain outcomes. That someone reacts in predictable ways. And life faithfully mirrors that someone. If you assume you are unlucky, you unconsciously notice every inconvenience. If you assume you are unwanted, you interpret neutral events as rejection. If you assume you are powerful, you interpret obstacles as temporary. The outer world is not shaping your identity. Your identity is shaping the meaning you give to the outer world. So I ask you directly, who have you decided you are? Not what has happened to you, not what others have said about you. Who have you decided to be? Because that decision is operating right now. You do not experience life raw. You experience it filtered through your self-concept. And your self-concept is not fate. It is a story you have repeated until it became automatic. But you can rewrite a story. You cannot rewrite the past as an event, but you can rewrite it as identity. You can decide that what you once called failure was preparation. You can decide that what you once called rejection was redirection. You can decide that you are no longer the version of yourself who struggled in the same way. The moment you assume a new identity, everything begins to reorganize. But here is where most people stop. They try to change their circumstances while clinging to the same self-image. They want wealth while still identifying as someone who never has enough. They want love while still identifying as someone who is not chosen. They want freedom while still identifying as someone trapped. That cannot work. You must become the person for whom the desired reality is natural, not forced. Natural. If you assume you are confident, you do not ask, how do I act confident? You ask, how would I think if I already knew I was enough? If you assume you are successful, you do not obsess over proof. You move as someone who expects success. Identity precedes evidence. Evidence follows identity. The chick does not wait for wings outside the shell. It grows them inside first. And the pressure to break through is not random. It is the natural result of inner development. You may feel pressure right now. You may feel like your old behaviors no longer fit. Your old conversations feel dull. Your old fears feel repetitive. That is growth pressing against the shell. Do not mistake it for instability. It is expansion, but breaking the shell requires courage. Because once you break it, you cannot crawl back inside. You cannot unsee what you have seen about yourself. And the world may not immediately agree with your new identity. It may test you. It may reflect your old story for a time. But remember what I told you before. The outer world is an echo. It takes time to catch up. If you change inwardly and then look outward for immediate validation, you will be tempted to return to the old self. Do not return. Persist. If you decide I am no longer the one who is overlooked, then think from that place. If you decide I am no longer the one who struggles endlessly, then think from stability. You do not wait to feel different because circumstances changed. You feel different first. This is the reversal that liberates you. You have been taught that identity is discovered through experience. I am telling you, identity is chosen in imagination and expressed through experience. When you close your eyes and imagine yourself as the person you desire to be, do not see it as fantasy. See it as selection. You are selecting a state, and the state you select, if you persist in it, must objectify. This is law. You have already proven it in negative ways. You assumed you were not good enough, and life reflected it. You assumed things would go wrong, and they did. So why not assume something greater? Why not assume you are favored? Why not assume doors open for you? Why not assume you are deeply loved? The only reason you hesitate is because the old identity feels familiar. Familiar does not mean true. It means practiced. You have practiced being a certain version of yourself for years. Of course it feels real, but you can practice a new one. And at first it may feel unnatural. That is normal. Every new state feels foreign until it becomes home. The shell cracking is uncomfortable, but staying inside it is fatal to your growth. You are not here to maintain an outdated self-image. You are here to evolve consciously, and evolution begins with assumption. Decide who you are now, not based on memory, not based on fear, based on vision, then live inwardly from that decision. The world will follow. It always does. Because you are not a passive character in a fixed story. You are the author revising the script. And the moment you truly accept that, the shell no longer has power over you. I want you to look at the invisible prison you have been living in. Because it is not made of iron bars. It is made of beliefs. You have seen a massive elephant tied to a thin rope, connected to a small wooden stake in the ground. As a child, that elephant tried to break free and could not. It pulled with all its strength and the rope held. After enough attempts, it stopped trying. Now it is powerful enough to rip trees from the earth. Yet it stands still, because it believes it is bound. I want you to see yourself in that image, not as weak, but as conditioned. You are not trapped by reality. You are trapped by a conclusion you accepted long ago. At some point in your life you tried something and failed. You asked and were rejected. You trusted and were disappointed. You dreamed and were told to be realistic. And in that moment you formed a belief. You decided something about yourself. Maybe you decided, I am not good at this. Maybe you decided I am not chosen. Maybe you decided success is hard for me. And because the pain felt real, the conclusion felt permanent. But listen carefully. A conclusion drawn in pain is not a law of existence. It is a moment frozen in memory. Yet you have been living as if that moment defines you. The rope around the elephant is not strong now. The only thing that holds it is memory. The only thing that holds you is identification with that memory. You say this is just how it is for me. But how it is for you has been shaped by what you assumed after those early experiences. When you were small, you did not have the awareness you have now. You interpreted events through limited understanding. A rejection meant I am unworthy. A failure meant I am incapable. A delay meant I am unlucky. And you carried those interpretations into adulthood. But you are no longer that child. You have grown in strength, in knowledge, in capacity. Yet the rope remains because you never questioned the belief. I am asking you to question it now. Who told you that you cannot earn more? Who told you that relationships always end badly for you? Who told you that your ideas are unrealistic? Trace the belief back. You will often find it tied to a single experience or a small series of experiences, and you built an identity around it. The elephant does not test the rope because it assumes the outcome. You do not test your limits because you assume the result. You do not apply because you assume rejection. You do not speak because you assume you will be dismissed. You do not try because you assume failure. And life faithfully mirrors those assumptions, not because it is cruel, but because it reflects your state. This is the invisible prison. It is not enforced from outside. It is maintained from within. And the key is not effort alone. The key is awareness. When the elephant realizes it is strong enough, it only needs one moment of true effort to break free. But that effort must come from a new assumption. It must assume I can move. In the same way, you must assume I am no longer bound by that past conclusion. You cannot carry the belief, I am limited, and expect unlimited results. You must release the identity of the one who was once powerless. I know it feels real. I know the past felt convincing. But the past does not have creative power now. Only your present assumption does. If you continue to identify as the one who was hurt, you will unconsciously recreate situations that confirm that identity. If you continue to identify as the one who struggles, you will interpret neutral events as struggle. But if you dare to assume I am free now, I am capable now, I am strong now, something begins to shift. You may not see it immediately in the outer world, but inwardly you will feel a different posture. You will feel less fear when opportunities arise. You will feel less hesitation when you are called to act. That is the rope loosening. Freedom does not begin when circumstances change. It begins when self-concept changes. The elephant's body was always powerful. It was the mind that was restricted. Your potential has always been present. It is your self-image that has limited its expression. I want you to understand that nothing in your external world is as strong as the assumption you hold within. The rope is not stronger than the elephant. The memory is not stronger than your present awareness. You are not meant to live your entire life defined by a conclusion you formed under pressure. You are meant to revise it. You are meant to say that was who I thought I was. But it is not who I am now. This is not denial of the past. It is reinterpretation of it. You can look at the same event and assign it a new meaning. Instead of saying that failure proved I am not capable, you can say that failure trained me. Instead of saying that rejection proved I am unwanted, you can say it redirected me. When you change the meaning, you change the identity. When you change the identity, you change the behavior. And when you change the behavior, the world must respond differently. The invisible prison cannot survive sustained awareness once you see the rope for what it is, a thin strand of belief. You cannot unsee it. And once you truly know that you are stronger than the story that once confined you, you will not remain still. You may feel fear as you begin to pull. That is natural. The elephant may feel resistance the first moment it tests the rope. But the resistance is not proof of impossibility. It is proof that movement has begun. You are not here to stay tied to a stake built from memory. You are here to walk in the full awareness of your strength. And the moment you assume I am no longer bound, the prison dissolves. Not because the world changed first, but because you did. Now that you see the rope, we must speak about breaking the stake. Awareness alone is powerful, but awareness must be followed by deliberate assumption. I am not asking you to fight the rope with frustration. I am asking you to withdraw belief from it. This is a ritual of release, not a battle of force. You have been tied to certain conclusions for so long that they feel like facts. So the first step is simple but profound. You must identify the stake. What belief have you accepted as permanent? What sentence do you repeat about yourself without noticing? I am not good with money. I always attract the wrong partner. Things never work out for me. I am behind. I am too late. I am not talented enough. Do not generalize. Be precise. The stake is always specific. When you name it clearly, you expose it. And once exposed, it loses some of its power. Now, I want you to trace it back. When did you decide this? Not when did it happen, but when did you decide what it meant? You may see a memory, a moment of embarrassment, a rejection letter, a failed attempt, a voice from a parent or teacher. That moment was not the prison. Your interpretation was, and here is where your power returns. If you gave it meaning once, you can give it new meaning now. The past does not argue with you. It only echoes what you assume about it. This is the second step of the ritual. Revision. Instead of replaying the event as proof of limitation, replay it as preparation. Instead of saying that moment proved I cannot, say it trained me. Feel it differently. See yourself responding differently. Hear a different outcome. You are not changing history in a physical sense. You are changing your relationship to it. And your relationship to the past determines your identity in the present. Now comes the most important step. You must assume a new self-concept, not as a wish, not as a hope, as a decision. Decide that you are no longer the one who struggles in that area. Decide that you are capable. Decide that you are supported. Decide that you are favored. This is not delusion. It is selection. You have been selecting identities unconsciously your entire life. Now you select consciously. But listen to me carefully. The world may not change instantly, and this is where your persistence is tested. If you assume I am abundant, and you look at your bank account tomorrow and see the same numbers, you must not retreat. Those numbers are the echo of your old assumption. They are not the verdict on your new one. If you assume I am loved, and someone acts distant, you must not collapse back into the old story. Their behavior may be the final echo of the previous state. The stake breaks when you persist in the new identity despite temporary contradiction. The elephant does not snap the rope by thinking once I am strong. It snaps it by moving from strength. You must think from the new state. Ask yourself throughout the day, how would I think if I truly believed I was free in this area? How would I respond if I knew I was already chosen? How would I walk if I felt secure? Do not act for show. Act inwardly. Change the internal dialogue. Instead of, I hope this works, say, of course this aligns with me. Instead of, I am afraid it will fail, say, everything rearranges in my favor. At first your mind may resist. It may say this is unrealistic. But that voice is the old identity protecting itself. You are not fighting the world. You are replacing a story. And replacement requires repetition. This is why I call it a ritual. Each day you must return to the new assumption, especially at night before sleep. Feel yourself as the version of you who is already free. Feel it as natural, not dramatic, not exaggerated. Natural. The more natural it feels, the more stable it becomes. The more stable it becomes, the more your actions shift automatically. And when your actions shift, opportunities appear that were invisible before, not because they were not there, but because your perception was filtered by limitation. Freedom is not granted. It is recognized. The stake was never stronger than you. It was only reinforced by attention. Every time you repeated the old belief, you tightened it. Every time you said, this is just how I am, you secured it. Now you will do the opposite. Every time the old thought arises, you will gently replace it. Not with strain, with certainty. I am not that version anymore. I am free in this area. I am capable here. I am supported here. And you persist. Not for a day, not for a week, until it feels obvious, until you forget there was ever a rope. Because that is the final stage of liberation, when you no longer identify as someone who had to break free. You simply move. The ritual is complete when the old belief feels foreign. When someone repeats the old narrative about you and it sounds outdated, that is when you know the stake is gone. And understand this clearly. You are not becoming someone new. You are revealing who you have always been without the false conclusion. The rope was never your identity. It was an assumption, and assumptions can be changed. The moment you accept that fully, the prison dissolves. You do not need permission. You do not need perfect conditions. You need decision and persistence. And you have both available now. So ask yourself, are you willing to live as the one who is free? Because the only thing that ever held you was the belief that you were not. I want you to see the world differently now. Not as something acting upon you, but as something responding to you. There is a simple story of a young boy who stood before a mountain and shouted in anger, "I hate you." The mountain answered back, "I hate you." Frightened, he ran to his father and told him that someone in the valley hated him. His father smiled and said, "Go back and shout, 'I love you.'" The boy returned and shouted, "I love you." And the mountain answered, "I love you." The boy learned that day that he was not being attacked. He was being echoed. I am telling you that your life works in the same way. You think people are against you. You think circumstances are unfair. You think the world is cold or generous or indifferent on its own. But the world is not initiating the conversation. You are. You are the one speaking first. Not always with words, but with assumptions, your dominant feeling, your quiet belief about yourself, your expectation of how things will unfold. That is the shout sent into the valley, and what returns to you is the echo. If you live with the silent conviction that nothing ever works out for me, you will notice delays, obstacles, misunderstandings, and you will say, "See, I was right." But what you are seeing is not proof of fate. It is the reflection of assumption. If you carry the inner statement, "People always leave me," you will interpret neutral actions as abandonment. You will behave in subtle ways that confirm it, and life will echo the same theme back to you. I know this may challenge you, because it removes the comfort of blame, but it also gives you back power. If the world is an echo, then you are not at its mercy. You are at the center of it. The boy in the valley could have continued shouting anger and living in fear of the voice, or he could realize that he controls what comes back. In the same way, you can continue reacting to what you see, or you can change what you are sending. This does not mean you fake positivity. It means you change your inner conversation. What are you consistently saying within yourself about your life? When you wake up in the morning, what tone greets the day? Is it expectation or dread? Is it confidence or doubt? You may not speak these thoughts out loud, but they are active, and they shape perception. The mountain does not decide whether to return love or hate. It returns whatever it receives. Reality does not decide whether to bless or punish you. It organizes around your dominant state. If you assume struggle, you notice struggle. If you assume ease, you begin to notice support. The echo may not be immediate. There is often a delay. That delay is where faith operates. Many people change their inner voice for a moment and then look outward and say nothing changed. And in that moment they return to the old shout. They reinforce the old echo. You must understand that what you see now may be the echo of who you were yesterday, not who you are choosing to be today. If you want a different response, you must persist in sending a different signal. And that signal is not forced words. It is assumed identity. If you assume I am respected, you walk differently. You speak differently. You interpret events differently. And slowly the world mirrors that new tone. If you assume I am provided for, you make decisions from security rather than panic, and opportunities that were invisible begin to stand out. This is not magic in the childish sense. It is the law of correspondence. As within, so without. The outer world is structured to reflect the inner state, not perfectly in every moment, but consistently over time. I want you to notice how often you rehearse negative conversations in your mind, how often you imagine arguments, rejection, failure. Those mental rehearsals are shouts into the valley, and you are surprised when similar patterns return. What if instead you rehearsed success? What if instead you imagined being understood, appreciated, supported? What if you assumed that things align for you more often than they fall apart? At first it may feel unfamiliar, because you have practiced the old shout for years, but the mountain does not remember your past shouts. It only returns what you send now. The moment you change the tone, the echo begins to change. You are not here to fight the echo. You are here to become aware of the source. And the source is you. Stop arguing with reflections. Stop resenting the valley. Turn inward and listen to what you are projecting. If your life feels cold, ask, what assumption am I carrying about myself? If your life feels unstable, ask, what expectation am I repeating? This is not about self-blame. It is about self-authorship. You are not guilty for past unconscious shouts. But now that you know, you are responsible for what you send forward. The boy learned that the voice in the valley was his own, and once he learned that, fear disappeared. In the same way, when you understand that reality is echoing you, you stop feeling attacked by it. You begin to shape it. You begin to choose your inner statements more carefully. You begin to speak from confidence rather than insecurity. And gradually, steadily, the world responds, not because it has favorites, but because it is built to mirror consciousness. You are not powerless in a chaotic universe. You are a transmitter in a responsive field, and what you consistently transmit returns amplified. So ask yourself now, what have you been shouting into your valley? And are you ready to send something new? Now we must go deeper than the echo, because the echo is only the effect. The cause is assumption. You have heard people say you attract what you want, but I am telling you something more precise. You attract what you are. Wanting is not the same as being. Wanting often carries the vibration of not having. When you say, I want more money, the feeling behind it is often, I do not have enough. And life responds to the feeling of not enough. When you say, I want love, the hidden assumption may be, I am alone. And life reflects that state. The law does not respond to your surface words. It responds to your assumed identity. That is why two people can repeat the same affirmation and experience different outcomes. One is speaking from longing. The other is speaking from conviction. One is asking, the other is assuming. And assumption is the creative act. When you assume something to be true about yourself, even quietly, even without announcement, your perception begins to reorganize around that assumption. If you assume you are always overlooked, you will notice every moment where you are not acknowledged. You will filter out the evidence that contradicts it. If you assume you are favored, you will notice opportunities that align with you. The world will not change its structure randomly. You will change what you notice, how you respond, and what you expect. And expectation shapes behavior. Behavior shapes interaction. Interaction shapes outcome. It all begins with the state you occupy. I want you to understand that you are always in a state of confidence or doubt, a state of abundance or lack, a state of security or fear. And the state you repeatedly return to becomes your identity. You do not need to chase the outer world. You need to choose the state. If you choose the state of being supported, you will think from support. If you choose the state of being successful, you will think from success. There is a difference between thinking of and thinking from. Thinking of success is imagining it as distant. Thinking from success is imagining as if it is already natural. When you think from, your decisions shift. You do not hesitate as much. You do not sabotage opportunities. You do not cling in fear, because inwardly you have already accepted that you are the one who experiences the desired reality. The law of assumption is simple but demanding. It requires persistence. It asks you to remain faithful to the unseen identity, even when the visible world shows old evidence. This is where many fail. They assume for a moment and then check the mirror of reality. If the reflection is unchanged, they doubt, and doubt is a return to the old state. Remember what I told you about the echo. What you see now is the echo of past assumption. If you change inwardly today, you must allow time for the outer world to realign. But do not watch the clock in anxiety. Live from the new identity. If you assume you are abundant, how would you feel walking into a room? If you assume you are loved, how would you speak? If you assume you are chosen, how would you interpret silence? The shift is subtle but powerful. You are not begging life to change. You are selecting a version of yourself, and the version you select determines the script that unfolds. This is not manipulation. It is alignment. The world is not separate from you. It is responsive to you. When you persist in a state, that state becomes natural. When it becomes natural, it becomes effortless. You do not strain to believe it anymore. You simply are it. And once you are it inwardly, it must externalize. You have already proven this law in negative ways. Think about a time you were convinced something would go wrong. You felt it, you rehearsed it, and somehow it unfolded in a similar way. That was not coincidence. That was assumption expressing itself. Now imagine if you used the same intensity of expectation for outcomes that favor you, not with desperation, with calm certainty. When you assume something deeply, you do not need to shout it. You do not need to convince others. You do not need to check constantly. You simply move through life as if it is already true, and the outer world reorganizes quietly. Doors open, conversations align, opportunities appear that match your state. You might call it luck, but it is law. The law does not judge what you assume. It does not evaluate whether you deserve it. It reflects what you consistently accept as true about yourself. If you assume you are second best, life will place you in second position. If you assume you are the one who is selected, life will arrange itself accordingly. The only obstacle is your attachment to the old self-concept. You may feel safer in limitation because it is familiar. But familiar is not destiny. It is repetition. You can repeat a new state. You can practice assuming something greater about yourself. At night, before sleep, imagine yourself as already the person you desire to be. Feel it as natural, not exaggerated. Natural. Let the feeling settle. Do not force emotion. Accept it quietly. And during the day, when old thoughts arise, gently return to the new assumption. Not angrily, not anxiously, steadily. The state you persist in becomes your reality. You do not get what you wish for. You get what you are. So ask yourself now, who are you being? Because that is what life is answering. Now I must speak to you about the delay, because this is where most people lose their power. You change your assumption. You select a new identity. You begin to think from abundance or love or confidence. And then you look at your current circumstances and they appear unchanged. The bank account looks the same. The relationship dynamic feels the same. The opportunity has not yet appeared. And in that moment, doubt begins to whisper. It says nothing is happening. It says this is not working. And if you listen to that voice, you return to the old state. You must understand something very clearly. What you see today is not proof of who you are becoming. It is the echo of who you have been. There is always a delay between the inner shift and the outer reflection. That delay is not punishment. It is transition. Imagine shouting into a vast valley. The sound does not return instantly. There is a space of silence before the echo comes back. If you shout again during that silence in panic, you confuse the sound. In the same way, when you change your inner assumption, there will be a period where the outer world still reflects your former state. This is where discipline matters. If you allow the old evidence to dictate your belief, you cancel the new assumption before it has time to objectify. The visible world is not creative. It is reflective, and reflection lags behind cause. You are the cause. The world is the mirror. So when you look into the mirror and see the old image, do not panic. It is only showing you the last instruction you gave. If you persist in the new instruction, the mirror must update. But if you react emotionally to the old reflection, you reinforce it. This is why emotional discipline is essential. You cannot claim to assume abundance while feeling constant fear of lack. You cannot assume you are loved while scanning every message for rejection. Your state must be stable, and stability requires trust. Not blind optimism. Trust in the law. Trust that what you consistently assume must externalize. Think of planting a seed. You do not dig it up each morning to check if it has roots. If you did, you would destroy it. Yet many people do this mentally. They assume a new state and then immediately dig into their circumstances looking for proof. When proof is not visible yet, they declare failure, and the seed never has time to grow. I want you to practice inner persistence. When you assume something new, protect it. Do not discuss it with those who doubt. Do not measure it by old standards. Do not demand immediate confirmation. Live quietly from it. If you assume you are prosperous, make decisions from calm confidence rather than urgency. If you assume you are chosen, do not chase validation. If you assume you are successful, move with expectation rather than desperation. The delay is simply the space where the unseen reorganizes into the seen. The outer world is rearranging in ways you cannot observe yet. Conversations are aligning. Opportunities are forming. Circumstances are shifting. But you cannot see the full chain of events while it is assembling. Your only responsibility is to remain faithful to the new state. Faith is not forcing yourself to believe against logic. Faith is loyalty to your chosen identity. When doubt appears, you gently return to the assumption, not angrily, not dramatically, calmly. You say to yourself, "This is only the echo of my old state. I am no longer that version," and you continue. This is maturity in consciousness. Anyone can feel confident when evidence supports them. Few can remain confident while evidence catches up, but those who can, create deliberately. If you react to every temporary setback as proof that nothing changed, you will live in reaction forever. But if you understand that circumstances are in motion, that what you see is a delayed response, you stop being shaken by appearances. You stop giving authority to what is fading. The old reality may intensify briefly before dissolving. This often happens because the last momentum of the previous state is expressing itself fully. Do not interpret that as failure. Interpret it as completion. The storm you see may be the final expression of a past assumption, and, if you remain steady, it will pass. Your power is not in forcing the outer world, it is in remaining internally aligned. When you wake up and the evidence still looks familiar, you do not collapse. You reaffirm. When someone behaves in a way that echoes your old story, you do not personalize. You remember this is transitional. The delay is not denial. It is incubation. The unseen must crystallize, and crystallization requires continuity of assumption. You are not waiting for life to approve you. You are allowing life to reorganize around who you have decided to be. So when you look at your current circumstances, do not ask why has nothing changed. Ask, am I still faithful to the new identity? Because that is the only thing that determines the outcome. The echo is coming. It always does. The only question is whether you will hold your new tone long enough for it to return. Now I want to show you another trap. One that feels like effort, but is actually fear. There is a simple way hunters capture monkeys. They place fruit inside a narrow jar. The monkey reaches in and grabs the fruit, but once its fist is closed, it cannot pull its hand back out. The jar is not locked. The monkey is not tied. The only thing that keeps it trapped is its refusal to release what it is holding. I want you to see yourself in that image, not as foolish, but as attached. You say you are stuck. You say circumstances are holding you back. But I ask you gently, what are you gripping so tightly that you cannot move? Is it the need for a specific person? Is it the need for a certain outcome? Is it the need for validation? Is it the need to control how and when something happens? Attachment is subtle. It disguises itself as desire, but desire is natural. Attachment is fear of not having. When you say, I must have this or I cannot be happy, you close your fist, and the world mirrors that contraction. You cannot assume abundance while clinging in desperation. You cannot assume love while holding on in fear. The law responds to state, not to pleading. When you grip tightly, your inner state says, I am incomplete without this, and reality echoes incompleteness. The monkey is free the moment it opens its hand, but opening the hand feels like loss. It feels like surrender, and this is where misunderstanding occurs. Surrender is not giving up your desire, it is giving up your fear around it. You do not release the vision. You release the tension. You stop insisting that it must happen in one specific way. You stop measuring your worth by its arrival. You stop monitoring every detail in anxiety. When you assume you already are the one who has what you desire, you no longer chase it. You no longer clutch it. You rest in it, and resting is powerful. When you are attached, you check constantly. You analyze every message. You question every silence. You interpret every delay as danger. That state of vigilance tells the world you do not trust the outcome, and the world reflects instability. But when you assume it is done, when you feel internally secure, you behave differently. You do not need reassurance every hour. You do not need proof every day. You move calmly, and that calmness allows the desired reality to unfold without resistance. Think about a time you wanted something so intensely that you felt anxious. That anxiety did not attract it faster. It made you tense. It made you reactive. It made you misinterpret signals. And sometimes it pushed the very thing away. That is the jar. Your fist was closed. The paradox is this: what you release flows toward you. What you cling to resists you. Because clinging is rooted in the assumption of lack. When you say, "I need this," you affirm, "I do not have it." When you say, "I am already whole," you affirm completeness. And completeness is magnetic. This does not mean you become indifferent in a careless way. It means you become inwardly secure. You know who you are. You know what aligns with you, and you trust that it comes naturally. If something delays, you do not panic. If someone pulls away, you do not collapse. You remain centered. That centered state is the open hand. You are not grasping at the fruit because you assume fruit is available to you. The monkey does not realize its freedom is one small movement away. You may not realize that your freedom is one internal shift away. Let go of the belief that your happiness depends on controlling every detail. Let go of the need to force outcomes. Let go of the timeline. Assume it is yours already in identity, and then move lightly. When you hold your desire loosely, you allow space for it to manifest in a way that may even exceed your expectation. But when you tighten your grip, you narrow the path. Ask yourself honestly, where am I tense? Where am I monitoring too closely? Where am I saying I cannot be at peace until this changes? That is the jar, and your closed fist is the assumption of lack. The moment you choose to feel complete now, even before the outer change, you open your hand, and once your hand is open, you are no longer trapped. The fruit may still be there. It may even be easier to access. But now you are not imprisoned by it. The law does not reward desperation. It responds to certainty, and certainty feels like ease. When you know something is yours, you do not chase it. You expect it. You allow it. You align with it. And alignment is quiet. It is not frantic. So I ask you, are you willing to release the grip? Are you willing to trust the state more than the timeline? Because the jar was never locked. It only required you to open your hand. Now I want to reveal to you something that may seem like a contradiction. The harder you try from fear, the further away the result feels. The more you struggle in anxiety, the more resistance you create. This is the law of reversed effort. When a person who does not know how to swim panics in the water, they thrash and exhaust themselves. The more they fight, the more they sink. But when they relax and trust the water, the body naturally rises. Floating is not achieved by force. It is achieved by release. In the same way, your desired reality does not come through strain rooted in doubt. It comes through alignment rooted in certainty. I am not telling you to stop taking action. I am telling you to stop acting from fear. There is a difference. When you act from fear, you are trying to fix something you believe is broken. When you act from assumption, you are expressing something you believe is already true. If you assume you are behind in life, you rush, you compare, you overwork in panic, and that panic colors your results. If you assume you are exactly where you need to be, you move with clarity. You take action from stability rather than desperation. The outer behavior may look similar. The inner state is completely different, and the inner state is what creates. Many people think that intensity of effort equals speed of manifestation. But intensity without alignment creates friction. If you assume I do not have enough, and you work endlessly trying to prove you do, you are reinforcing the belief of lack. If you assume I am already abundant, and you work from creativity and confidence, your actions flow. They do not feel like punishment. They feel like expression. This is why surrender is misunderstood. Surrender is not quitting. It is not passivity. It is the release of resistance. It is the quiet knowing that what you desire is already yours in state. When you assume it is done, your nervous system relaxes. You stop forcing. You stop checking constantly. You stop trying to manipulate every variable. You move naturally, and natural movement is powerful. Think about times in your life when things worked out almost effortlessly. You were not obsessing. You were not gripping. You were simply aligned. You expected it. And because you expected it calmly, it unfolded smoothly. That is not luck. That is coherence between your assumption and your action. But when you doubt, you create internal contradiction. Part of you says it is mine. Another part says, I hope it happens. And that tension expresses as struggle. The law of reversed effort teaches you that force cannot replace faith. If you are trying to convince the world that you are worthy, you are acting from the assumption that you are not. If you are trying to control someone into loving you, you are acting from the assumption that you are not already lovable. But if you assume I am worthy, I am chosen, I am supported, you no longer strain to prove it. You embody it, and embodiment attracts effortlessly. The water does not resist you when you relax into it. Life does not resist you when you align with it. The more you push from insecurity, the more you create turbulence. The more you trust from identity, the more you experience flow. So I ask you to examine your effort. Is it driven by fear of losing? Is it driven by urgency born from lack? Or is it driven by expression of who you already are? If you feel constant tension around your goal, that tension is a signal. It says you are trying to obtain something you do not yet believe is yours. Change the belief, and the tension dissolves. When you truly assume it is yours, you still act, but you act from peace. You prepare without panic. You plan without dread. You move without desperation. That is floating. You are not abandoning your vision. You are embodying it. There is no need to chase what you already identify with. There is no need to fight for what you assume is aligned with you. The law does not respond to strain. It responds to state. And the state of certainty feels light. It feels stable. It feels grounded. So let go of the frantic energy that says, I must force this into existence. Instead, assume it is already established in consciousness. Act as the one for whom it is natural. Speak as the one for whom it is normal. Decide as the one for whom it is inevitable. When you do this, you will notice that opportunities meet you halfway. Conversations flow more easily. Timing feels synchronized. Not because you forced the universe, but because you stopped resisting it. The swimmer floats not because the water changed, but because the swimmer stopped fighting. Your life will rise not because the world suddenly favors you, but because you stopped struggling from doubt. You released the grip of fear and allowed your assumption to carry you. And once you experience this shift, you will never confuse effort with effectiveness again. You will understand that true power is calm, true creation is quiet, and true manifestation happens when you relax into the identity of the one who already is. Now I want to speak to you about value, because many of your struggles are not about opportunity. They are about how you see yourself. There is a story of a young man who found an old watch in his grandfather's drawer. It looked worn, scratched, forgotten. He took it to a pawn shop and asked how much it was worth. The man behind the counter glanced at it and said $5. The young man felt disappointed. He took it to a watchmaker. The watchmaker looked closer and said perhaps $50. Still unsure. He brought it to a collector who specialized in rare timepieces. The collector examined it carefully and said, "This is extremely rare. I will give you $50,000. The watch did not change. Only the eye that evaluated it changed. I want you to understand this deeply. Your value has not fluctuated based on who failed to see it. Your worth has not diminished because someone underpriced you, yet you have been living as if the pawn shop defined you. When someone dismissed your idea, you assumed you were not creative. When someone rejected you, you assumed you were not lovable. When someone overlooked you, you assumed you were ordinary. But those were evaluations made from limited perception, and you internalized them as identity. This is how undervaluation becomes self-concept. You walk into rooms expecting to be underappreciated. You negotiate from insecurity, You accept treatment that does not align with your true nature because you have believed the $5 estimate. But the law of assumption does not respond to your hidden potential. It responds to the value you assume about yourself. If you assume you are easy to replace, life will mirror that assumption. If you assume you are rare, your behavior changes. You speak with clarity. You set boundaries without guilt. You do not chase spaces that do not recognize you, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. The watch did not argue with the pawn shop owner. It did not try to prove itself. It simply existed. Its rarity was inherent. In the same way, your worth is not something you must convince others of. It is something you must accept within yourself. When you truly accept that you are valuable, you stop tolerating environments that treat you as disposable. You stop shrinking your voice to fit insecure spaces. You stop begging for recognition because you know that the right environment naturally acknowledges you. The problem is not that you lack value. The problem is that you have been seeking evaluation from those who cannot perceive it. And when you repeatedly place yourself in spaces that underappreciate you, you reinforce the belief that you are small. But the shift begins when you withdraw from the pawn shop mentality. You decide that you no longer measure yourself by temporary reactions. You no longer let one person's blindness define your identity. This is not about superiority. It is about accuracy. If you assume you are priceless, you behave differently. You invest in yourself. You protect your time. You select relationships more consciously. You no longer over-explain your boundaries. You no longer apologize for existing boldly. And here is something crucial. When you undervalue yourself, you unconsciously attract those who confirm it. When you overextend without reciprocation, you reinforce imbalance. When you settle for less than you desire, you affirm that less is what you deserve. But when you assume I am rare, I am worthy, I am not easily replaced, the dynamic shifts. You attract those who meet you at that level. You repel those who do not align. This is not manipulation. It is resonance. The watch did not become rare because the collector said so. It was rare before it was recognized. Recognition followed understanding. In the same way, when you recognize your own value, the outer world adjusts. You stop negotiating from lack. You stop overcompensating. You stop chasing validation, because validation becomes internal, and internal validation stabilizes your state. Remember what we have spoken about. The world echoes your assumption. If you assume you must earn love through exhaustion, you will exhaust yourself trying to maintain it. If you assume you are inherently worthy of respect, you will naturally expect it, and expectation shapes experience. You do not need to prove your value to everyone. You need to live as if you already know it. This does not mean you avoid growth. It means you grow from confidence rather than insecurity. There is a difference between improving because you feel inadequate and expanding because you feel powerful. One is driven by lack. The other is driven by expression. I want you to ask yourself honestly, where have I accepted $5 for something that is priceless? Where have I allowed someone else's limited perception to define me? And are you ready to stop doing that? Because the moment you assume your true worth, you will notice something. Doors that once felt closed no longer attract you. Conversations that once drained you feel unnecessary. You begin to gravitate towards spaces that reflect your new self-concept. The watch did not need to change its mechanism to increase in value. It needed to be seen correctly. You do not need to become someone else to be worthy. You need to see yourself clearly, and when you do, the world has no choice but to reflect that clarity, because value assumed becomes value expressed, and value expressed becomes value recognized. Now that you understand your value does not change based on who is looking at you, we must go further. It is not enough to know you are worth more. You must act from that knowing. There comes a moment when you realize that remaining in the pawn shop is a choice. No one is forcing you to stand at the counter waiting for someone to recognize your rarity. You stay because part of you still believes that $5 might be accurate. So you negotiate. You lower your standards. You adjust your expectations. And every time you do, you reinforce the belief that this is what you deserve. I want you to see this clearly. When you accept less than your true value, you are not being humble. You are being misaligned. And misalignment creates quiet resentment. You feel unseen. You feel underappreciated. But instead of changing environments, you question yourself. You ask, what is wrong with me? Nothing is wrong with you. You are simply standing in a place that cannot measure you correctly. And the law of assumption responds to the value you claim, not the value you secretly wish others would notice. If you assume I am lucky to be here, even when here drains you, life will continue to reflect situations where you must prove your place. If you assume I am honored wherever I go, your posture shifts. You no longer beg for inclusion. You select where you belong. Self-valuation is not arrogance. It is clarity. It is the quiet decision that you will no longer offer yourself at a discount. And here is where courage enters, because leaving the pawn shop feels risky. You may think, what if there is nowhere else? What if I am overestimating myself? What if I lose what little I have? These fears reveal that part of you still trusts scarcity more than worth. But I ask you, what is the cost of staying? When you remain in spaces that undervalue you, you slowly shrink. You silence ideas. You dim personality. You tolerate treatment that does not match your potential. And over time, you begin to forget who you are. The world does not elevate what you treat as common. If you treat your time as disposable, others will too. If you treat your energy as endless, others will take it freely. But when you assume my presence matters, my time is valuable, my energy is selective, your behavior aligns with that assumption. You say no without over-explaining. You step back without drama. You move toward environments that resonate. And something interesting happens. When you stop offering yourself cheaply, those who truly see you step forward. This is not coincidence. It is resonance. When you believe you are rare, you seek spaces that recognize rarity. You do not try to convince those who cannot see. You do not exhaust yourself teaching others how to value you. You simply reposition yourself. And repositioning begins internally. Before you physically leave a situation, you must leave it in identity. You must stop identifying as the one who settles. You must stop identifying as the one who is grateful for crumbs. You must assume I am the one who is respected, appreciated, reciprocated. When that assumption stabilizes, your actions follow naturally. You do not need to announce your departure dramatically. You simply move differently. You choose conversations differently. You invest your time differently. You align your standards with your worth. Many people stay in $5 spaces because they fear being alone. But being alone temporarily is not loss. It is recalibration. When you withdraw from misaligned environments, you create space for aligned ones. But if you cling to undervaluation out of fear, you block that space. Remember what we spoke about earlier. Clinging is attachment rooted in lack. You cannot assume you are valuable while remaining attached to places that contradict it. Your environment reinforces your self-concept. If you constantly surround yourself with those who treat you as ordinary, you will struggle to embody extraordinariness. This is not about superiority over others. It is about alignment with yourself. There are people who will see you clearly. There are spaces that will feel natural rather than draining. But you must be willing to leave the counter where you are mispriced. I know it feels uncertain, but uncertainty in pursuit of alignment is better than certainty in misalignment. When you assume I deserve better, you do not chase better anxiously. You expect it, and expectation shifts behavior. You no longer tolerate patterns that diminish you. You no longer overcompensate to secure approval. You no longer confuse endurance with loyalty. Loyalty to what? To a place that cannot measure you, to a dynamic that undervalues you. The watch did not become more valuable by convincing the pawn shop owner. It became properly valued when placed in the right context. You do not need to prove yourself endlessly. You need to reposition yourself. And repositioning is an inner act first. Decide that you are no longer the one who is underpaid emotionally or materially. Decide that you are no longer the one who accepts treatment that feels beneath your standard. And then persist in that identity. The world will test you briefly. It may present familiar offers. It may tempt you with comfort disguised as opportunity. But if you remain faithful to your new self-concept, You will naturally gravitate towards spaces that reflect it. You do not have to force your way into respect. You assume it and act accordingly. And life reorganizes. Self-valuation is not loud. It is steady. It is not aggressive. It is grounded. It does not require applause. It requires alignment. So I ask you, are you ready to stop standing at the wrong counter? Are you ready to walk away from the $5 estimate and live as the one who knows their worth? Because the moment you do, the entire dynamic shifts, and you will wonder why you ever stayed where you were mispriced. Now I want to speak to you about pain, because you cannot walk through life without encountering heat. There is a simple illustration. 3 pots of boiling water sit on a stove. In one pot, a carrot is placed. In another, an egg. In the third ground, coffee. After time passes, the carrot that was once firm becomes soft. The egg that was once fragile inside becomes hard, and the coffee changes the water itself. The heat was the same. The response was different. I want you to see that life will boil you at times. Circumstances will intensify. Pressure will rise. And you will not always choose the temperature, but you will always choose who you are within it. When disappointment comes, do you collapse? When criticism comes, do you harden? When loss comes, do you close your heart? Many people become like the carrot, strong on the outside until adversity touches them. Then they lose structure. Others become like the egg, sensitive at first, but after enough hurt they build a shell so thick that nothing penetrates. They call it strength, but it is protection, and protection often blocks growth. But the coffee does something different. It transforms the water. It does not resist the heat. It uses it. This is what I mean by alchemy. You cannot always avoid pain, but you can transmute it. The event itself does not determine who you become. Your assumption about it does. If you assume pain means I am unlucky, life will continue to feel unfair. If you assume pain means I am being shaped, your posture changes. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, who am I becoming through this? And that question shifts your state. Remember what we have spoken about. The outer world reflects your inner assumption. If you assume suffering defines you, you will unconsciously identify as someone wounded. If you assume challenge refines you, you begin to see opportunity even in discomfort. The carrot does not intend to become weak. The egg does not intend to become rigid. They simply react. Reaction is unconscious. Transformation is deliberate. When pressure appears, your first impulse may be to retreat, to blame, to harden. But I ask you to pause. What if this moment is not here to break you? What if it is here to extract something stronger from you? Think about the times you grew the most. It was rarely during comfort. It was during challenge, during uncertainty, during the moments that forced you to expand. The fire that melts gold is the same fire that burns wood. The difference is substance. You are not meant to avoid heat. You are meant to become aware within it. If you see yourself as fragile, pressure confirms it. If you see yourself as adaptable, pressure reveals it. And this is not denial of pain. It is reinterpretation. You do not need to pretend something did not hurt. You need to decide what it means. If a relationship ends, you can say this proves I am unlovable. Or you can say this revealed what no longer aligns. If a project fails, you can say this confirms I am incapable. Or you can say this trained me. Meaning is chosen, and meaning shapes identity. When you choose meaning consciously, you reclaim power. You stop being the carrot. You stop being the egg. You become the coffee. You enter the boiling water and you say, this will not diminish me. This will deepen me. You begin to look at adversity differently. You begin to ask what strength is being cultivated here. What patience? What resilience? What clarity? When you assume that every challenge refines you, you no longer fear difficulty in the same way. You still feel discomfort, but you do not interpret it as defeat. And because you do not collapse internally, you remain aligned. The law responds to state. If you remain in a state of victimhood, you recreate cycles of struggle. If you remain in a state of growth, you attract expansion. The same heat that once softened you can now sharpen you. but only if you assume it can. You are not at the mercy of circumstances. You are at the mercy of interpretation, and interpretation is yours to choose. I am not saying seek suffering. I am saying do not waste it. Do not let pain pass through you without extracting its lesson. The coffee changes the water because it carries within it something stronger than the heat. You carry within you awareness, and awareness allows transformation. When you are aware that this moment does not define you, you stop identifying with temporary conditions. You begin to see yourself as evolving rather than failing. And evolution requires friction. If you assume I grow through this, your nervous system stabilizes. You become curious instead of reactive. You look for insight instead of confirmation of fear. And gradually you notice something. The same types of challenges that once overwhelmed you no longer do, because your identity shifted. You are not the fragile version anymore. You are the one who transforms. So I ask you now, when the water boils, who will you be? Will you soften into doubt? Will you harden into resentment? Or will you infuse the situation with strength? The heat will come regardless, but who you become in it is your decision, and that decision shapes the life that follows. Now I want you to go beyond simply surviving the heat. It is not enough to endure pressure. It is not enough to avoid breaking. You are here to transform the environment itself. When coffee enters boiling water, it does not become soft like the carrot. It does not become hard like the egg. It releases its essence. The water changes color. The aroma fills the air. The entire atmosphere shifts because of what the coffee carries within. I want you to understand this deeply. You are not placed in difficult situations merely to survive them. You are placed there to reveal what you contain. The fire does not create your essence. It exposes it. If you assume that adversity diminishes you, you will shrink under it. But if you assume that adversity extracts your highest qualities, you begin to respond differently. You do not collapse into self-pity. You do not retreat into bitterness. You look at the heat and you say, this will draw something powerful out of me. This is not denial. This is deliberate identity. The coffee does not argue with the boiling water. It does not attempt to cool it down first. It simply releases what it is. In the same way, when life intensifies, you do not need to control every variable. You need to express who you have decided to be. If you assume I am resilient, resilience appears in your behavior. If you assume I am creative, solutions begin to surface. If you assume I am strong, you stand differently even when uncertainty surrounds you. The environment does not determine your essence. Your essence influences the environment. And this is where you reclaim power. Many people wait for circumstances to improve before they allow themselves to be confident. They wait for reassurance before they allow themselves to be peaceful. They wait for proof before they allow themselves to be powerful. But the coffee does not wait for the water to cool. It transforms it while it is still boiling. You must learn to embody your desired state in the midst of challenge, not after it disappears. If you assume I am calm only when everything is stable, you will rarely feel calm. But if you assume I am calm by identity, even instability cannot shake you deeply. The transformation begins within. Think of times when you faced difficulty and unexpectedly discovered strength you did not know you possessed. That strength was always there. The pressure simply brought it to the surface. So instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask what quality is being drawn out of me. Perhaps patience, perhaps courage, perhaps compassion. The heat reveals layers you did not access during comfort. And when you respond consciously, you begin to influence others around you. Your steadiness becomes contagious. Your clarity shifts conversations. Your grounded presence changes outcomes. You are not a passive ingredient in boiling water. You are an active force. But to operate as that force, you must assume that you are capable of transformation. If you enter every challenge with the belief that it will overwhelm you, you prepare yourself to shrink. But if you enter with the belief that it will refine you, you expand. Refinement is not painless, but it is purposeful. When gold is placed in fire, impurities rise to the surface. They are removed. The gold becomes purer. In the same way, pressure reveals what in you is unstable. It shows you where you still cling to fear, where you still doubt your worth. where you still react from old identity. And this revelation is a gift, because awareness allows adjustment. You are not being punished by intensity. You are being clarified by it. The coffee does not lose itself in the water. It becomes more fully itself. The aroma is stronger. The presence is unmistakable. That is what happens when you stop resisting growth. You stop asking for easier circumstances and begin asking for stronger character. And character does not form in comfort. It forms in contrast. If you assume every setback contains instruction, you remain curious rather than defeated. If you assume every disappointment redirects you toward alignment, you remain open rather than closed. This is how you transform the fire into fragrance. You decide that nothing will enter your life without contributing to your expansion. Even loss, even rejection, even delay, everything becomes material for growth. And because you interpret it that way, your state remains stable. Stability under pressure is power, not loud power, not aggressive power, quiet power, the kind that does not need to announce itself, the kind that shifts rooms without explanation. When you become the coffee, you stop asking, how do I escape this heat? You ask, how do I express my highest self within it? And that question changes everything, because expression is creative, reaction is repetitive. You are not here to repeat cycles of collapse or hardness. You are here to evolve. So, the next time you feel intensity rising around you, do not retreat into old patterns. Pause, breathe, and remember who you have decided to be. You are not fragile. You are not meant to close. You are not meant to dissolve. You are meant to infuse the moment with strength. And when you do, the environment shifts, not instantly perhaps, but inevitably, because consciousness expressed consistently reshapes experience. So I ask you now, when the water boils again, will you soften? Will you harden? Or will you release your essence and change the atmosphere entirely? Now I want to speak to you about focus, because power without direction becomes exhaustion. There is a simple illustration of a professor holding a glass of water in front of his class. He asks, how heavy is this glass? Some say a few ounces, some say half a pound. The professor replies, the absolute weight does not matter. What matters is how long I hold it. If I hold it for a minute, it is light. If I hold it for an hour, my arm aches. If I hold it for a day, my arm becomes numb and useless. The weight did not change. The duration did. I want you to see how often you hold mental glasses far longer than necessary. A small comment, a delayed response, a temporary setback. By itself it may not be heavy, but you hold it for hours. You replay it at night. You rehearse it the next day, and soon it feels overwhelming. The issue is not always the event. It is the attention you give it. Attention is creative energy. Where you place it consistently shapes your state. If you assume you are unlucky, you focus on every inconvenience and ignore every alignment. If you assume you are supported, you notice assistance even in subtle forms. Focus filters reality. It does not change facts instantly, but it determines which facts dominate your awareness. And awareness determines assumption. When you hold on to a negative thought repeatedly, you strengthen its emotional weight. You convince yourself it is larger than it is. The professor did not need to throw the glass away permanently. He simply needed to put it down. In the same way, you do not need to deny challenges. You need to stop carrying them constantly in your mind. Rumination is not problem solving. It is repetition, and repetition deepens identity. If you replay a mistake again and again, you identify as the one who failed. If you replay rejection repeatedly, you identify as the one who is unwanted. But if you consciously redirect focus, you interrupt that pattern. This is not suppression. It is selection. You cannot focus on everything at once. You choose where to rest your attention, and that choice determines your inner atmosphere. Think about the difference between a light bulb and a laser. A light bulb spreads energy in every direction. A laser concentrates energy into a single point and can cut through steel. The energy source is similar. The focus is different. Many people live like light bulbs. Their attention is scattered across worry, comparison, regret, and doubt. and then they say they feel weak. They are not weak. They are unfocused. When you gather your attention and direct it deliberately, you become precise. If you assume I am capable, you focus on opportunities to express capability. If you assume I am supported, you focus on signs of support. This does not mean ignoring reality. It means refusing to magnify what diminishes you. The glass of water becomes unbearable only when held too long. So I ask you, what are you holding? What thought are you replaying? What fear are you carrying hour after hour? You say you are tired, but perhaps you are not tired from life. You are tired from holding the glass without pause. The solution is not always to fix the glass. It is to set it down. Consciously shift attention. When a negative thought arises, do not fight it aggressively. Simply acknowledge it and redirect. Choose a new focus. Choose a new inner conversation. If you assume I am growing, you look for growth. If you assume I am progressing, you notice improvement. This discipline of focus strengthens your state, and state creates outcome. You cannot assume abundance while focusing constantly on lack. You cannot assume love while scanning for rejection. Your mind will search for evidence that matches your focus. That is its design. So give it better instructions. Decide that your attention will support your chosen identity. When distraction appears, gently return, not with frustration, with steadiness. Over time, you will notice something profound. Situations that once consumed you no longer dominate your day. Conversations that once echoed endlessly in your mind lose intensity because you are no longer feeding them with attention. The glass feels lighter not because it changed, but because you stopped gripping it. Focus is not about forcing positivity. It is about intentional awareness. You decide what occupies your inner space, and what occupies your inner space shapes your experience. The world outside competes constantly for your attention. News, opinion, comparisons, expectations. But your power lies in directing attention inward deliberately. When you choose to concentrate on the state you desire, you strengthen it. And strengthened states externalize. Scattered attention weakens assumption. Concentrated attention stabilizes it. So practice this daily. Notice when you are holding something too long. Notice when your thoughts circle the same fear, and put the glass down. Replace it with a thought aligned with who you have decided to be. You are not at the mercy of every passing concern. You are the guardian of your focus, and focus is creative authority. So I ask you now, will you continue holding the glass until your arm is numb? Or will you set it down and direct your energy toward the life you are choosing to embody? Now I want to speak to you about neutrality, because your reactions often trap you more than your circumstances. There is an old story about a farmer whose horse ran away. The neighbors came and said, "This is terrible." The farmer replied, "Perhaps." The next day the horse returned and brought several wild horses with it. The neighbors said, "This is wonderful." The farmer replied, "Perhaps." Later, the farmer's son tried to ride one of the wild horses, fell, and broke his leg. Again, the neighbors said, "This is terrible." The farmer replied, "Perhaps." Soon after, soldiers came to recruit young men for war, but because the son had a broken leg, he was spared. The neighbors said, "This is wonderful." And the farmer again said, "Perhaps." I want you to understand the power of that word. Perhaps is not indifference. It is wisdom. It is the refusal to label an event too quickly. You often decide within seconds that something is good or bad for you. A job rejection feels like failure. A delay feels like punishment. A disagreement feels like proof of incompatibility. But you see only one frame of a larger picture. You are judging the movie by a single scene. When you rush to label an experience as disaster, you anchor yourself to that assumption, and your emotional state follows. If you assume this is terrible, you respond with fear or anger, and that response shapes the next event. But if you pause and say perhaps, you interrupt the automatic narrative. You create space. You allow the unfolding to continue without locking yourself into despair. Neutrality does not mean you feel nothing. It means you choose not to conclude prematurely. This is powerful because assumption operates through interpretation. If you interpret every setback as proof of limitation, you strengthen a limiting identity. If you interpret every challenge as potential redirection, you remain open. Perhaps keeps you open. It prevents you from collapsing into extremes. When something goes well, you do not become arrogant or complacent. When something goes poorly, you do not become defeated. You remain steady, and steadiness is strength. Remember what we have spoken about. The outer world is an echo. If you react intensely to every event, you amplify instability, but if you remain centered, you stabilize your state. Stability allows clarity. Clarity allows better decisions. The farmer did not know the full chain of consequences. Neither do you. When a door closes, you assume it is loss, but perhaps it is protection. When a plan falls apart, you assume it is failure, but perhaps it is alignment. The mind wants certainty. It wants to categorize quickly, but growth often hides inside uncertainty. If you label too fast, you may resist what is actually serving you. Neutrality is not passive. It is disciplined perception. It is saying, I do not yet see the entire design, and that humility keeps you calm. When you assume that life is working against you, you see enemies everywhere. When you assume that life is reorganizing for you, even through contrast, you respond differently. Perhaps allows you to remain in possibility. Instead of saying this ruined everything, you say, perhaps this is leading somewhere better. That subtle shift changes your emotional chemistry. It keeps you from spiraling. It protects your assumption, because if you immediately declare disaster, you reinforce a narrative of struggle. But if you allow unfolding without rigid labeling, you preserve faith in your chosen identity. You are not meant to understand every event in real time. Some experiences only reveal their meaning later. Think of moments in your past that felt devastating at the time but later proved beneficial. If you had insisted on labeling them permanently as tragedy, you would have missed their transformation. Perhaps is a bridge between confusion and wisdom. It prevents emotional extremes from dictating your state. When you practice neutrality, you become less reactive. And when you become less reactive, you become more creative. You stop being pulled in every direction by circumstance. You remain grounded in your assumption of growth and alignment. This does not mean you deny emotion. It means you do not let emotion finalize your conclusion. You feel disappointment, but you do not declare defeat. You feel excitement, but you do not assume permanence. You stay centered. The farmer's strength was not prediction. It was composure. He did not pretend to know. He simply refused to assume prematurely. And because he remained steady, he did not waste energy fighting what later proved beneficial. I want you to adopt that posture. When something unexpected happens, pause. Say perhaps. Allow space. Remind yourself that you see only a fragment of a larger unfolding. This protects your inner state, and your inner state determines your outer experience. If you remain neutral, you remain powerful. Because you are not thrown off balance by temporary appearances, you trust that what is aligning will reveal itself in time, and that trust stabilizes you. So the next time life surprises you, resist the urge to label instantly. Resist the urge to dramatize. Say perhaps, stay centered. Let the story continue before deciding its meaning. Because often what feels like loss is a disguised redirection, and what feels like gain may require deeper wisdom. Neutrality keeps you adaptable. Adaptability keeps you aligned. And alignment allows the law to operate smoothly through you. So I ask you now, can you allow uncertainty without collapsing into fear? Can you remain steady when you do not yet understand? Because that steadiness is quiet power. Now I want you to understand something about time, because impatience is one of the quiet destroyers of assumption. There is a story about the Japanese bamboo tree. After the seed is planted, nothing visible happens for a long time. The farmer waters the soil daily. He protects it. He nurtures it. But for years there is no sign above ground. A passerby might laugh and say nothing is growing, but beneath the surface an extensive root system is forming. And then, suddenly, within a short period, the bamboo shoots upward at astonishing speed. It does not grow rapidly because of those final weeks alone. It grows rapidly because of the invisible years of preparation. I want you to see your life through that lens. When you assume a new identity, when you choose a new state, you may not see immediate visible change. And the temptation is to believe that nothing is happening. But just because you do not see movement does not mean growth is absent. The roots are forming. Alignment is restructuring. Conversations are shifting beyond your awareness. Opportunities are developing quietly. But if you become impatient and abandon your assumption, you interrupt the process. Many people plant a seed of belief and then dig it up repeatedly to check if it has sprouted. They monitor circumstances anxiously. They ask, is it here yet? Why has nothing changed? And that anxiety reflects doubt. Doubt returns them to the old state. You must understand that manifestation is not always dramatic at first. It is often subtle and internal before it becomes visible and external. When you persist in the assumption that you are abundant, even while your bank account has not yet changed, you are growing roots of confidence and new decision-making. When you persist in the assumption that you are loved, even if a specific situation has not shifted, you are growing roots of self-security and emotional stability. These roots support future expression. If the bamboo were to shoot upward immediately without roots, it would collapse. In the same way, if external success arrived before your identity stabilized, you would not sustain it. You would sabotage it unconsciously. So the invisible phase is not delay, it is preparation. I know you want visible results. I know you want tangible confirmation. But I ask you to consider this. Would you rather have fast growth that cannot be maintained, or steady growth that supports expansion? Patience is not passive waiting. It is confident expectation. The farmer who waters the bamboo does not doubt daily. He does not say, perhaps it will never grow. He continues because he understands the nature of the seed. You must understand the nature of assumption in the same way. When you assume consistently, you are planting a state, and that state requires time to organize outwardly. The visible world moves through sequences. It cannot always rearrange overnight, but it must rearrange if you remain faithful to your chosen identity. The danger comes when you compare your timeline to someone else's. You see someone else's visible growth and you assume you are behind, but you do not see their roots. You do not see the years of unseen preparation. If you assume I am progressing at the right pace for me, you release comparison. Comparison creates doubt. Doubt disrupts continuity. Continuity strengthens identity. You are not late. You are building, and building beneath the surface is often the most critical phase. Think about your own internal changes. Perhaps you are calmer than before. Perhaps you react less dramatically than you once did. Perhaps you notice opportunities you would have ignored previously. These are roots forming. They may not look impressive to the outside world, but they are essential. When visible growth finally appears, it will feel sudden to others. They will call it overnight success. They will not see the invisible patience that preceded it. The bamboo does not question the soil. It does not compare itself to faster growing plants. It grows according to its nature. You must grow according to yours. If you assume your efforts are meaningless because results are not immediate, you weaken your state. But if you assume everything I am doing is compounding beneath the surface, you remain steady. Compounding is invisible at first. Then it becomes undeniable. The key is persistence without desperation. You water the soil, but you do not stare at it anxiously. You trust that what is planted is alive, and this trust stabilizes your nervous system. You stop oscillating between hope and despair. You settle into quiet confidence. The unseen phase tests your loyalty to your new identity. Are you committed only when you see proof, or are you committed because you understand the law? Remember what we have spoken about. The outer world is an echo, but echoes take time to return. Roots take time to form. Alignment takes time to crystallize. This does not mean stagnation. It means preparation. If you remain faithful during the invisible phase, the visible phase will astonish you. Growth that seems sudden is rarely sudden. It is the result of sustained inner assumption. So I ask you now, can you remain steady when nothing appears to be happening? Can you trust the unseen work? Because if you can, you will rise in ways that seem miraculous to others. But to you, it will feel inevitable. And inevitability is born from invisible patience. Now I want you to understand patience in a deeper way, because patience is not inactivity. It is preparation. Think of a woman who knows she is pregnant. The child is not yet visible to the world in the early stages. There may be no outward sign that anything has changed, but she does not question whether a child exists. She does not wake each morning asking if it is real. She adjusts her behavior immediately. She eats differently. She rests differently. She prepares a room. She chooses a name. She buys clothes for a child that no one else can see yet. That is active patience. That is faith embodied. I want you to approach your desires the same way. When you assume something is yours, you do not wait passively for proof. You begin preparing as if it is inevitable. If you assume you are becoming financially abundant, you start organizing your habits as someone who manages abundance. If you assume you are entering a loving relationship, you cultivate the emotional stability of someone who is already secure. If you assume success is unfolding, you refine your skills as someone who expects opportunity. The woman does not prepare the nursery because she sees the baby every moment. She prepares because she knows, and that knowing shapes her actions. This is what many misunderstand. They think patience means sitting still and hoping. But true patience is alignment in motion. It is behaving in accordance with the assumption before visible evidence appears. If you assume you are worthy, you stop accepting treatment that contradicts it. If you assume you are prosperous, you stop making decisions from panic. If you assume you are chosen, you stop chasing validation. These adjustments are preparation. They signal to your subconscious that the new identity is real, and identity determines experience. The woman does not doubt daily because her body has already confirmed the conception. In the same way, your inner assumption must feel conceived. You must feel that it has already begun within you. When that happens, anxiety decreases. You no longer demand immediate proof. You prepare calmly, and preparation accelerates manifestation because it stabilizes your state. Imagine claiming you are expecting abundance but continuing to live in constant fear of lack. That contradiction delays alignment. But if you calmly organize your life as if increase is natural, you strengthen coherence. Active patience is not forcing outcomes. It is cooperating with them. It is asking yourself, how would I act if this were already unfolding? And then acting accordingly. Not dramatically, not theatrically, naturally. The woman does not announce her pregnancy to everyone immediately. She nurtures it quietly. In the same way, you do not need to declare your intentions loudly. You nurture them internally. You protect them from doubt. You feed them with consistent assumption. You do not dig them up for inspection. You allow them to develop, and during this development phase, you refine yourself. You expand your capacity to receive what you are expecting. Because here is something crucial. If you are not internally prepared, you may reject what you claim to desire. You may sabotage it unconsciously. Preparation expands capacity. When you prepare for success, you build the discipline to sustain it. When you prepare for love, you build the emotional maturity to maintain it. Without preparation, sudden arrival can overwhelm you. So do not resent the gestation period. It is strengthening you. The visible result is only the final stage. The invisible preparation is the foundation. Think about how differently you would move through your day if you truly believed something beautiful was already forming. You would not obsess over small obstacles. You would not interpret every delay as failure. You would remain steady because you know something is growing. That knowing stabilizes emotion. And emotional stability protects your assumption. Many abandon their desire because they confuse silence with absence. But silence can be incubation. The womb is quiet, yet growth is constant. You cannot see it, but it is happening. If you treat your desire as conceived, you shift from longing to expectancy. Longing feels empty. Expectancy feels grounded. Expectancy prepares space. It rearranges habits. It shifts priorities. It creates room for arrival. So I ask you, are you preparing for what you claim to want, or are you simply wishing for it? Preparation reveals belief. If you truly assume it is coming, your behavior will reflect it. You will stop clinging. You will stop doubting every fluctuation. You will move with quiet confidence. The woman does not question the pregnancy each day because she understands the process. You must understand the process of assumption in the same way. Conception begins internally. Growth continues invisibly. Expression arrives visibly. Your role is not to force the birth prematurely. Your role is to nurture the state. Protect it. Align with it. Act from it. And trust that what has been conceived in consciousness must eventually be delivered in experience. So I ask you now, are you willing to prepare as if it is already done? Because active patience is the bridge between assumption and arrival. Now I want you to question one of the deepest illusions you have carried. The illusion that you are separate from the very life you are trying to influence. There is a story of a salt doll who wished to measure the depth of the ocean. It walked toward the water confidently, curious and determined. The moment it stepped into the sea, it began to dissolve. As it moved deeper, it felt itself disappearing, and just before it fully dissolved, it whispered, "Now I know what the ocean is. It is me." I want you to see the truth hidden in this story. You have been standing at the edge of life as if it was something outside of you. You ask, why is life doing this to me? You ask, how can I control circumstances? You ask, when will the universe respond to my request? But what if you are not separate from the field you are addressing? What if the ocean you are trying to measure is the same substance as your own consciousness? The salt doll did not lose itself in tragedy. It realized unity. In the same way, when you understand that the outer world is not independent from your inner state, you stop negotiating with life as if it were distant. You begin to realize that the separation you feel is conceptual. You say the world is out there and I am in here, but the law we have been speaking about shows something else. The world echoes you. It mirrors you. It reorganizes around your assumption. That is not the behavior of something separate. That is the behavior of something intimately connected. You are not shouting across a gap. You are shaping from within. The illusion of separation creates fear. It makes you feel small in a vast universe. It makes you feel as if you must compete for resources, for love, for opportunity. But if you are not separate, then what you seek is not outside of you. It is expressed through you. The salt doll feared dissolution because it thought it would vanish. But in dissolving, it discovered expansion. It became the ocean. In the same way, when you release the rigid identity that says I am alone against circumstances, you expand into understanding. You stop trying to force life and begin aligning with it. If consciousness is primary, if your assumption shapes your experience, then you are not a fragment disconnected from power. You are an extension of it. The illusion says I must convince the world to change. The truth says I must change within, and the world reflects. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is experiential. Notice how your perception shifts when your mood shifts. Notice how the same room feels different when you are confident versus when you are insecure. The environment did not change physically. Your state altered your experience. That is unity in action. The ocean did not resist the salt doll. It absorbed it. In the same way, life does not resist your consciousness. It expresses it. When you assume separation, you feel powerless. When you assume unity, you feel responsible. Responsibility is not burden, it is authorship. If you are not separate, then every reaction is creative. Every assumption ripples outward. You are not pleading with something external. You are participating in something shared. The illusion of separation makes you compare constantly. It makes you believe someone else's success reduces yours. It makes you fear loss as if it threatens your existence. But if you are part of a unified field of consciousness, expansion is not limited. Growth in one area does not diminish another. You are not fighting for a fixed amount of opportunity. You are expressing states into a responsive reality. The salt doll could not measure the ocean without becoming it. You cannot understand your creative power while clinging to the idea that you are separate from life. When you dissolve the rigid boundary of I versus the world, you feel less anxious. You feel less defensive. You feel less isolated, because you realize you are not begging from the outside. You are shaping from within. This awareness changes your posture. You stop seeing obstacles as enemies. You begin to see them as reflections of unresolved states. You stop seeing other people as threats. You begin to see them as mirrors. This does not make you passive. It makes you conscious. It makes you deliberate about what you assume, because you understand that your inner world is not contained privately. It radiates, and what radiates returns. The salt doll did not lose identity in fear. It discovered a larger identity. In the same way, you do not lose yourself when you release separation. You expand into clarity. You realize that what you seek is not distant approval or external rescue. It is alignment with your own consciousness. When you change within, the without must follow. That is unity. You are not a spectator in a random universe. You are a participant in a responsive field. And once you understand that, loneliness diminishes. Fear softens, because you see that you are not trying to bend something foreign. You are aligning with something intimate. So I ask you now, are you willing to dissolve the illusion that you are separate from your reality? Because when that illusion fades, you no longer feel powerless. You feel connected, and connection is strength. Now that you have seen the illusion of separation, I want you to live differently, not as a small fragment trying to survive the ocean, but as the ocean expressing itself in the form of a drop of salt. You are not weak matter floating in an indifferent world. You are consciousness localized. You are the vastness appearing as individuality. And when you understand this, fear begins to dissolve. The salt doll believed it would disappear if it entered the ocean, but what it discovered was expansion. It did not become less. It became more. In the same way, when you stop identifying as a powerless individual fighting external forces, you begin to move with quiet authority. You stop asking life for permission. You begin to embody it. If the ocean moves through you, then your thoughts are not random accidents. They are currents. Your assumptions are not private fantasies. They are tides, and what you consistently hold within must influence what unfolds without. When you live as if you are separate, you beg. When you live as if you are connected, you assume, and assumption is calm. It is steady. It does not shout. It does not panic. It knows. Living as the ocean in the form of salt means recognizing that the same intelligence that moves the tides moves through you. The same creative principle that shapes galaxies shapes your experience. This is not arrogance. It is alignment. Arrogance says, I am better than others. Alignment says, I am part of something vast. When you see yourself as part of that vastness, insecurity loses its grip. You no longer feel that you must compete endlessly. You no longer feel that resources are scarce. You no longer feel that you are alone in your efforts, because you understand that life is not opposing you. It is expressing through you. Think about how differently you would approach challenges if you truly believed you were not separate from the creative source. Would you panic so quickly? Would you doubt so deeply? Or would you remain centered, trusting that what you need is already within the same field you inhabit? When a wave rises in the ocean, it does not question whether it belongs. It moves naturally because it is the ocean. In the same way, when inspiration arises within you, when desire forms in your heart, it is not random. It is movement of the same creative current. Instead of dismissing it as unrealistic, you can honor it as expression. Instead of shrinking it with doubt, you can nurture it with assumption. Living as the ocean in the form of salt means you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance. You begin to see circumstances as reflections of states within the greater whole. If something feels out of alignment, you do not collapse into blame. You adjust your state. You recalibrate your assumption. You return to the awareness that you are not outside the system. You are within it and of it. This awareness stabilizes you. It removes the frantic need to control every detail. Because you understand that you are not trying to manipulate something foreign. You are influencing something interconnected, and interconnected systems respond organically. When you remain calm in the midst of chaos, you are not ignoring reality. You are remembering your depth. The surface of the ocean can be turbulent, but the depths remain still. If you identify only with the surface, every wave feels like threat. But if you identify with the depth, you remain grounded. Living as the ocean means you choose depth over surface reaction. You choose consciousness over impulse. You choose assumption over fear. and gradually your external life begins to mirror that depth. People respond to your steadiness. Opportunities align with your clarity. Situations shift around your calm confidence, not because you forced them, but because you embodied coherence. The salt dole dissolved and discovered unity. You do not need to dissolve physically to discover yours. You simply need to dissolve the illusion that you are cut off from power. When you wake up each day, remind yourself, I am not separate from the creative field of life. I am its expression. This changes how you think. It changes how you speak. It changes how you respond. You become less reactive and more intentional. You become less fearful and more grounded. You become less desperate and more assured. And assurance attracts naturally. The ocean does not chase rivers. Rivers flow into it. In the same way, when you live from inner wholeness, what aligns with you flows naturally. So I ask you now, will you continue to see yourself as a small fragment trying to survive the vastness? Or will you recognize that the vastness is expressing itself as you? Because the moment you live from that awareness, you stop begging life to change. You begin shaping it from within. And that is true power. Now we arrive at what feels like the final test. The golden ticket you have been searching for. Many people spend their lives believing that one event will change everything. One opportunity, one breakthrough, one external sign that proves they are chosen. They wait for it as if it were rare, as if it were handed to only a few. But I want you to see something clearly. The golden ticket is not an object placed into your hand by fate. It is a state assumed within you. If you believe that transformation requires permission, you will keep waiting. If you believe that power requires validation, you will keep searching. But the true ticket was always assumption. It was always identity. Think of a contest where only those who believe they belong dare to enter. If you never assume you are worthy, you never step forward. If you never step forward, you never discover what was available. The final test is simple but profound. Can you persist in your chosen identity without external confirmation? Can you remain the one who is confident, even when applause is absent? Can you remain the one who is abundant, even when numbers fluctuate? Can you remain the one who is loved, even when silence appears? This is the examination, not imposed by a cruel universe, but inherent in growth. Because if your identity collapses at the first sign of contradiction, it was never stabilized. The golden ticket is not about access to something outside of you. It is about recognition of what you already are. When you assume you are the one who succeeds, you move differently, you decide differently, you interpret events differently, and gradually, visibly, your world reorganizes around that assumption. But there will always be moments that challenge it, moments that appear to contradict your belief. These moments are not punishment. They are refinement. They ask you, who are you when evidence is incomplete? Who are you when the outcome is still forming? If you return to doubt, you fail the test, not because you are judged, but because you abandoned your state. If you remain steady, you pass, because you demonstrate that your identity is internal, not circumstantial. The golden ticket is self-authorization. It is the quiet declaration that I do not need permission to embody my chosen state. I do not need proof before I act aligned. I do not need applause before I feel worthy. Many wait for life to declare them special, but life reflects what you declare about yourself. If you assume you are ordinary, life treats you as replaceable. If you assume you are rare, life mirrors uniqueness. The test will often look like delay. It will look like silence. It will look like temporary contradiction. And in those moments, you will feel the temptation to revert, to say, perhaps I was mistaken, perhaps I am not chosen. But this is where you decide. The child who believes in a prize continues searching even when others give up. The one who doubts leaves early, and the opportunity remains unseen. You must become the one who persists beyond visible doubt, not stubbornly, calmly. You do not argue with reality. You remain aligned within it. If something does not move immediately, you do not collapse. You remember that assumption precedes evidence. The golden ticket is not handed to you by chance. It is claimed by identity. When you wake each day and say, I am the one who lives aligned, you are holding the ticket. When you act from worth without begging for validation, you are holding the ticket. When you remain centered in uncertainty, you are holding the ticket. And here is the final truth. The test never truly ends, because growth continues. Each new level presents a new refinement. But you are no longer the person who waits for rescue. You are the one who embodies authorship. You understand the rope was belief. The echo was assumption. The delay was incubation. The fire was refinement. The ocean was unity. And the ticket was always identity. Nothing external granted you power. You recognized it, and recognition is irreversible once stabilized. So I ask you now, when the final moment of doubt appears, will you surrender your state, or will you stand calmly and say, I know who I am? Because the world will always respond to that knowing, and the golden ticket has always been in your hand, waiting for you to realize you were the one allowed to use it.